Inflation has dropped to 6.9% in January 2023, down from 7.2% in December 2022. Inflation is still, however, uncomfortably high for South African Reserve Bank. The bank aims to keep inflation between 3 to 6% and has forecasted that inflation will average 5.4% in 2023, down from 6.9% last year. The fall in the price of fuel is the biggest factor behind the dip in inflation rate, with food inflation, on the other hand, continues to grow. Transport, which was previously the largest contributor to the rate, increased by 11.1% year on year and contributed to 1.6% to the inflation. This is after a drop in petrol and diesel prices in January. In 2022, the consumer inflation hit its highest levels in 13 years. The main contributors being high annual inflation rate for food and non-alcoholic beverages, housing, utilities, transport, miscellaneous goods and services. We also need to remember that the average inflation rate for the year of 6.9 hides differences in timing and the extent of price increases for different products. So what is inflation? Inflation is the increase in the average price level of goods and services in the economy over a period of time. It measures the rate of change of the price. Inflation can also be caused by the increase in the supply of money in the economy, increase in government spending, and events such as war and natural disasters. Inflation can lead to increase in unemployment, high interest rates, and a decrease in purchasing power, because the more something is, then the less the demand is and the less people can afford to buy that expensive thing. So why is there inflation? So inflation is caused by an increase in money supply, economic growth, and or cost push factors such as the cost of raw materials or labor. When money supply increases, the price of goods and services rises. Economic growth drives up the demand of goods and services, which can lead to higher prices. Cost push factors such as the rising of raw materials and factors that push up production costs, resulting in businesses passing that cost on to consumers. So there are two ways that the government controls inflation. Those are the fiscal method and also the monetary method. The fiscal policy is that the government adjusts taxes and spendings to slow down growth of the economy, thereby targeting inflation. The monetary policy involves the Reserve Bank adjusting the interest rate to control the supply and demand of money in the economy, making it more difficult to borrow and encourage or discourage spending. So in essence, how the government tries to control inflation is by increasing taxes. So if they increase taxes, they increase how much money you pay them, which then reduces how much disposable income you have, and therefore the demand for items will go down, and therefore inflation is controlled. The other way is also increasing the interest rate. We saw that interest rate went up recently, and that was to try to make inflation between what the Reserve Bank wants, which is between 3 and 6%. This means that interest rate goes up, which means that the cost of borrowing goes up, and therefore decreasing supply, demand, and how much people pay for interest rate, and therefore also control another way to control inflation in the country. So there are about 4 ways that we can manage inflation. So the first way I think we can manage inflation is to invest in financial assets. This is by buying shares, bonds, and mutual funds. This can be done at a reputable financial service provider. They can provide you with all the information that you need. So instead of your money just sitting in a bank and deflating and losing value over time and not doing anything for you, you can try to counter inflation by investing it in shares and possibly see growth on your money in the future. Another thing is also limit your spending and live within your means. So the more that you live within your means, the less financial pressure you put on yourself and how much money that you have. This, because when you live outside of your means and you spend more than you actually have, if there's any kind of change in the interest rate or prices, you've put yourself under a lot of financial pressure and the quality of your life just won't be good. So it's actually better to spend less and save more. And if you do get an increase or something like that, if you're fortunate enough to get an increase, then you can spend a little bit more. But just to always have a margin between how much your costs are, your total amount of costs, and your disposable income, so that you give yourself some kind of a margin to play with. And should something increase or there be some kind of unexpected event, you're then able to manage that better. And also just to be smart about purchasing power. So just taking advantage of sales and ensuring that you get the best deal possible. So remember, when you want to buy something, especially for example a car, a house, or even clothes, it's good to just look around and look for alternative cheaper things. Like the pressure of also social media and your friends and what they're doing, like we should just try to just live for ourselves and do what's within our means and what we can afford. If you, for example, do things for social gratification or social approval, then you find yourself just buying things that you can't afford, and that just makes your life a little bit harder because you're trying to catch a trend and you're trying to keep up with people who are also just living their lives. So it's also just good to live within our means, buy what we can afford, and make sure that make sure that we take control of our spending, take control of our money, and live a healthy, happy life from that. The last thing that you can do is to also have an emergency fund. So putting money aside for fixing something in your house that's broken and needs fixing, or replacing your tires or anything like that, is also a very good idea. Whatever you can, saving as much as possible so that you have money should an emergency arise. Remember, it's also a good idea to save, for example, for 3 to 6 months so that you can survive. Should something happen at your job, you can still survive off your savings for about 3 to 6 months. It's always a range and a good idea to have, so that you're not under pressure should something happen to you. The summary of this video is to explain what inflation is. So even though inflation is going down, prices are still going up. So the price of food is going up because the inflation rate is affected by many different factors. The most important factor is that there was a decrease in fuel and diesel. So then it made the inflation go down. And also it's because the government is also putting things in place so that the inflation goes down, like the fiscal and monetary policies that I have in place to control inflation. There are things that we can do as well on our side to make sure, or to try to make sure, that we manage our spending, to manage our money, because when things go up, we want to make sure that we've got enough to cover the essentials. And the best thing that we can do is to decrease how much we spend. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Please make sure that you subscribe if it was, and like, share, and comment, and then I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.